Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Ruben Gutierrez, and I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm a graduate of Cal State San Bernardino, where I did my undergrad in psychology, and I did my master's in clinical counseling psychology. And a little background about myself. I was born and raised in San Bernardino. Left to the military when I was 18 years old. I went to the Army. There wasn't a lot of opportunities going on at the time when I was growing up. At the time, college wasn't really an option for me. School was not high up on my list of things that I wanted to do or was doing at the time, actually. So I joined the military. And actually, it's one of the best things I ever did. Met a lot of new friends, learned a lot of new things. I was a combat medic while in the military. And when I got out, I worked for the VA hospital. Because of my medical experience, they hired me into the VA hospital. And I worked there for 3 years as a medical clerk. And then I went to the Postal Service and I worked for the post office for 17 years. And during that time, actually, while I was in the military, I had some problems with my kidneys, and I went through some testings in the military, and they found out that I had come across some unknown chemicals that affected my kidneys. So I had a kidney transplant in 1987, worked 17 years with the post office, and that's how long my kidney lasted until it started to reject. I got out of the post office, I retired, and the VA called me up and they said, "Hey, we saw that you had a few college courses. Would you like to go back to school?" They said, "We'll pay for it." I said, "Sure, why not?" So they wanted to capitalize on my experience a little bit in the post office, being in management. So they said, they kind of had the upper hand. They said, "We want you to take business classes since you already have some experience." So I started with business, and I did, I think, just one semester of business. And it wasn't for me. I had enough of postal management, and in the post office, you're more of like a glorified babysitter, just watching over employees, and that wasn't for me. So at the time, I had already graduated from a Bible college, so I thought psychology might be a good way to go. As a matter of fact, while in the Postal Service, a lot of my work as a manager had to do with employee issues, employee problems. So, somebody was getting hurt all the time. I'd call them in the office, sit down with them, find out that, they were going through a divorce or they had some kind of health issues that was causing them to trip. So it was kind of a natural progression to go from postal management into psychology. I took my undergrad, graduated, and I applied for the master's program in clinical counseling. And the VA went ahead and paid for that. So I graduated in 2012 with my bachelor's later in life, and then 2014 with my master's in clinical counseling psychology. I did my 3,000 hours to get licensed. So I did all the requirements to get licensed. However, because of my pay from the military, my pay from the VA, getting licensed and carrying a license was going to affect my pay at the time. So I decided not to get licensed through the state. So what I did is I started marketing myself as a life coach, but with a master's degree background. Little did I know that that was going to take off, because if you research life coaches, usually they just do a little coursework online and they get a certificate and they're good to go. So you don't really find life coaches with master's degree background and 3,000 hours of clinical training. So it's been a pretty good post-retirement business for me. So when I was approached by Noah through Courtney to talk about this colloquium, I'm like, this is right up my alley. I mean, exercise in the military and keeping myself healthy and fit. I did get a second kidney transplant. My first kidney transplant lasted 17 years. I got it in 1987. It failed in 2004. and I got a second kidney transplant in December of 2005, and it's doing great. And part of the reason why it's doing so well, I like to attribute it, is to my active lifestyle. So when Noah asked about, a topic for this event, I'm like, wow, this is great, because mental health and exercise, it goes hand in hand, but you rarely think about that. If you think about how many of you know you have to exercise, you want to go to the gym, you want to run, you want to work out, but something always gets in the way. It's either schoolwork, you've got to study, you've got an exam coming up, you've got midterms, you've got finals, you have research papers, all the gamuts of school, but you have to get some exercise in. And life gets in the way of exercising. It absolutely does, 100%. And so when you think about it, if you've heard about or read the research that's associated with positive correlations of exercise and people's mental health outcomes, there's tons of it. There's no denying the fact that exercise would be the number one or number two factor in keeping your overall mental health well, right? So we know, one, that exercise can help people minimize or overcome mental health issues such as depression, anxiety. Me being a veteran, any vets with PTSD. So any symptoms related to mental health issues, exercise has that positive correlation, right? So, but what happens when someone is already experiencing some type of mental health issue, such as depression or anxiety, to a point that it interferes or inhibits you from engaging in any type of exercise? Be honest with yourself. There's times where maybe we don't feel good because of an exam score, or we're just stressed out because we're studying for an exam. And the first thing we neglect is to get up and move. We want to go, in our minds, we want to get up, we want to go outside, we want to run. The gyms around me are still closed right now, so I can't go to the gym, but there's a lot of things that we can do at home. But the stressors and the rigors of life get in the way of us getting up, getting away from the computer, getting off the couch, getting something done that is going to exercise our bodies, right? So, have you ever heard the old saying that it takes money to make money? Right? I want you guys to think about that for a minute. Is that statement true? Does it really take money to make money? So all of you guys are in school right now. You're paying tuition, you're paying for books, you're paying for everything associated with going to school. You guys are paying money to eventually get into the career where you're going to make money, correct? I mean, everybody does it. I have a friend who he works for a great company, but he's doing a side business making T-shirts and cups and with those Cricut machines, And it took money for him to be able to make money. He had to buy the machine. He had to do, all that stuff to get that business up and running. So I want you to think about this. Put it in the context of exercise. Does it take energy, physical or mental energy, to gain energy? All of you know that when you exercise, you feel good about yourself. Initially, when you get done, you feel pumped up, you still feel good throughout the day. I remember in the military, there was a reason why they would get us up at 5 a.m. and we would do PT or physical therapy or physical training, physical training, PT. We'd get up at 5 o'clock every morning, Monday through Friday, and we would start our day. We'd do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and we'd run 2 miles, and every Friday we would run 5 miles. There's a reason behind that, because it gets your blood flowing. It gets the oxygen flowing through your body. It makes you mentally alert, physically stronger. Everything, it gets your system going. You have a great breakfast and you start your day. So there's a reason for that. So when you look at that in the context of, does it take money to make money? Does it take energy to gain energy? You're gaining energy from exercising, but what if you don't have the energy to start your exercise day or your exercise regimen. What happens then? Okay, so think about what's needed to get you up to want to exercise. Does it take energy? One. Does it take motivation? Does it take any motivation within you to be able to get up and go exercise? Do something, whether it's in front of your TV, whether it's outside, whether it's at the gym. Does it take motivation? Do you have to enjoy what you're doing? You know, no pain, no gain. It hurts to lift weights sometimes, or, you know, when you're on the treadmill and you're on that 8th mile or 9th mile, it takes, you have to be able to enjoy that, right? How about competence? What about your mental competency? Does it take a level of competence to be able to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this today, or I'm going to do this tomorrow? How much of that is there? So overall, does it take a positive mindset to be able to engage in exercise? Think about yourselves for a minute. Do you need a positive mindset to be able to engage in some type of exercise? Okay. So for today's talking purposes regarding mental health, I want to focus mainly on 2 types of mental health issues as they relate to exercise, and that would be depression and anxiety. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to start with defining depression. There's lots of different types of depression, and I'll get into that. So I'm going to talk about major depressive disorder. It's a common or serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, the way you act. Okay? Fortunately, major depressive disorder is treatable. Depression causes feelings of sadness, loss of interest in activities that you once enjoyed, and it can lead to a variety of emotional or physical problems, and it can decrease your ability to function at school or at work or at home. Okay? So the symptoms of depression can vary from person to person, and anywhere from mild to severe. So some of the symptoms include feeling sad or having a depressed mood, a loss of interest or pleasure in activities that you once enjoyed, changes in your appetite, such as weight loss or weight gain, unrelated to dieting, trouble sleeping or sleeping too much, loss of energy or increased fatigue, an increase in purposeless physical activity. So an inability to sit still. You're always fidgeting. You're pacing the room, or your hand wringing. Like something's always just has to be moving. Or even slowed movements or speech. Feelings of worthlessness or guilt. Difficulty thinking, concentrating, or making decisions. Or the most severe are thoughts of suicide or death. Okay? So the symptoms for a major depressive disorder, any one of these symptoms, well, there's got to be so many to actually meet the criteria that you have to be experiencing. But symptoms must last for at least 2 weeks, and they must represent a change in your previous level of functioning for a diagnosis of depression. So you may have felt some of these things before, and they didn't really bother you. But now, if you're unable to function in your daily life, such as to, get up and brush your teeth and take a shower, or even just get out of bed. I've had clients that are just unable to get out of bed completely. They just want to stay in bed and not do anything. And what happens to them is they become worse and worse and worse. And there has to be some type of intervention to be able to get those people up and out. Okay. So now I want to make a clear distinction between depression and a generalized sadness. There's times where we just feel sad for whatever. If you bombed on an exam, or you were late turning in an exam, if something happened with one of your friends, or with a relationship that you're in. There's a difference between sadness and the actual symptoms of depression that last for 2 weeks or more, okay? So when you think about sadness and depression, how much would that really affect you from being able to exercise? It would seem like you have more on your mind than to get up and want to go exercise. So it's that slippery slope. It's like, I want to go exercise, but I'm so sad. I can't get up. I don't want to get up. You know, I've lost interest in what I used to. If I used to exercise, I've lost interest in that. It just, there's nothing there for me to want to get up and exercise anymore, or let alone, you know, get up and brush your teeth or take a shower. So there's a lot of mental health factors that would prohibit you or hinder you from engaging in any type of exercise. Have any of you ever felt that way? Okay, so again, I failed to mention at the beginning when we started that I want this to be interactive. So I want you guys to speak up or type up or, you know, post your questions, post your comments. I don't want this just to be me speaking and that's it. I get tired of my own voice, believe me. So,
Ruben?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I wanna go ahead and let you know that, yeah, sometimes like things happen that way where, you know, you don't even notice it. You know, you feel like, you know, in certain parts that you're happy, but then you get to the point where, you know, you do like slowly figure out and start to notice the fact that you're not, you know, you're not getting out of bed anymore, and like you're not wanting to see the sun anymore, and you're not wanting to go work out and be active because all you want to do is just be stationary.
Absolutely. It creeps up on you without you even knowing. And that's one of the dangerous parts about that. You know how they say that hypertension or high blood pressure is the silent killer? Depression is no different. It's no different whatsoever, because, I mean, there could be times where, you know, you've just been on the go, going from the beginning of the semester to the end of the semester. You got through midterms, now you're doing your finals, and you get to that point where, you know, your adrenaline rush you're just ready to crash because you have no adrenaline left. You've been working on that adrenaline the whole semester to meet deadlines, to get your projects done, to study for your exams, and you just crash at the very end. So sadness and depression creep up very similarly. And we're going to get into recognizing these symptoms and how to get yourself out of that, okay? That's great. I appreciate that. Thank you, Ian. So the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, or the ending of a relationship, they're all difficult experiences for people to endure. So it's normal for feelings of sadness or grief to develop in response to such situations, okay? So the best thing to do is when you're feeling sad, stop for a minute and recognize that, yes, it's sadness. Okay, I'm sad because this relationship broke up. When you're able to understand that and feel it, then you're going to be able to do something about it, in other words. And we're going to get more into that too. So, but being sad is not the same as depression. I want to make that clear. So when you're grieving, let's say over the loss of someone, either a death or the breakup of a relationship, it's natural and unique for each individual, and you share some of the same features of depression than somebody that is going through major depressive disorder. So both grief and depression may involve intense sadness and withdrawal from usual activities. So don't ever just chalk up your sadness to well, you know what, I'm going to stop there. We're going to get into a little bit more of this. I don't want to get ahead of myself. This stuff, you can see how this stuff fires me up, right? And this is why I got into clinical counseling, because, you know, I have clients now that they can't differentiate between generalized sadness and depression. So a lot of people, when they feel intense sadness, they label themselves as being depressed right away. Labeling yourself with having depression, when you do that, it puts something in, you internalize that word, in other words. You internalize the word depression versus internalizing the word sad. Now, what's worse? When you hear those two words, which is worse to you? Sadness or depression? Depression is, yeah, exactly. Depression is the worst of the two. So when you get that within yourself, you internalize, and you know, all these people now, they're instant medical students because they go to WebMD and they let, oh yeah, I have that, I have that, I have that. And now, oh my gosh, I'm clinically depressed. I'm going to go lay down in bed for 2 weeks so I can check that off my list. No, don't do that. You have to be able to, and I'm going to call it mindfulness. And that's what I didn't want to get ahead of myself, but we're going to talk about that. So grief and depression, they can coexist for some people. So again, the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, being a victim to physical assault or a major disaster, they can all lead to depression. So when grief and depression co-occur, the grief is more severe and lasts longer than grief without depression. Okay, so that's the depression side. Anxiety disorders, I'll read a quick excerpt on that. Anxiety is a normal reaction to stress. Anxiety can be beneficial in some situations. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you have test anxiety? I'm going to raise both my hands. So one reason I didn't go on to get my PhD is because of test anxiety. There's no way. Every one of you here that are watching this today have some level of perfectionism in them. I'll guarantee you that. Every one of you watching and listening today have some level of perfectionism in you. If you didn't, you wouldn't be in college. If you didn't, you wouldn't care about your grades. If you didn't have some level of perfectionism, you would just turn in a paper and wouldn't care about it. So every one of you have some level of perfectionism in you and some level of test anxiety within you also. Now, the levels may vary. Me, before I sat down to take a test, man, my palms got sweaty. I started feeling it in the back of my neck. I'm like, okay, I know I studied for like 3 weeks before this exam. I got all my 3x5 or 5x8 cards. I've got them all done. I know what they are. I've memorized them. But yet, I'm still freaking out about this test. So some anxiety is natural, some anxiety is normal, and some anxiety is good for us, okay? But anxiety disorders, they differ from normal feelings of nervousness or anxiousness, or they involve excessive fear or anxiety, okay? So anxiety refers to an anticipation of a future concern and is more associated with muscle tension or avoidance behaviors. So much like depression, you avoid things that you used to enjoy. The same with anxiety. You engage in avoidance behaviors. It's just you don't want to be anywhere near something that's going to trigger you or that's going to stress you to the level where you start to feel that anxiety. It's a natural response that we have, okay? So fear is an emotional response to an immediate threat and is more associated with a fight or flight response, okay? Either staying to fight or leaving to escape danger. Man, there's many times I wanted to escape those exams. I can't tell you how many times I look at the door, I look at the exam, look at the door. I just wanted to make a beeline for that door and get out of there and just forget it. But no, I forced myself to stay. Okay, so anxiety disorders can cause people to avoid situations that trigger or worsen their symptoms, okay? Job performance, schoolwork, personal relationships, they can all be affected. So what I want you to recognize here is depression and anxiety both have components in it that cause you to avoid things that you used to enjoy, normal daily activities. So if you're experiencing sadness, if you're experiencing a normal worry, they're still going to cause you to avoid certain things that you used to enjoy. So let's take, for example, the exercise. If you enjoy exercising, you know it's something that you want to do, it's something that you have to do to keep yourself, physically fit, mentally fit, everything about you to continue functioning in your daily life. if you're experiencing any of these, not even to the clinical level of anxiety or depression, but sadness and worry, they're going to stop you or hinder you from engaging in any type of physical activity. Does that make sense? Okay. So,
really briefly, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Ruben. I just want to let you know if you guys are getting a little nervous or anxious yourself, or if any weird feelings start to come up, please refer to Dr. Huang. He is in our group chat. He will take you into a breakout room and talk to you guys and kind of help calm you down if you guys are getting a little tense or anything from any of the content that we're going over, just so you guys know. And Ruben, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, good. That's good, Noah. Thank you for that. I should have mentioned that in the beginning. That some of you, this might start to increase some of your anxiety, but I want to let you know that there are many treatments, many cures, some very simple as diaphragmatic breathing, and it's just breathing from your diaphragm, taking deep breaths through your nose, out through your mouth. Research shows that when you flood your system with oxygenated blood, anxiety and that oxygenated blood cannot coexist. So when you fill your system with oxygenated blood, the anxiety cannot stay. It has to go. So that's one of the quickest ways to be able to get through that. And I'm going to get into some more ways here too. So real quickly, there's a thing called the trans-theoretical model. Basically, it's the stages of change. And I use this with my clients also. It was developed in the 70s by Prochaska and DiClemente. And what it is, they developed these stages of change that people go through in relation to smoking cessation or to stop smoking. So they did a lot of research on this, and they came up with these 6 stages. Actually, it was 5. They added the 6th one later. And they developed these stages on how people develop or consider change. So if you're in any of these states of either depression or you're experiencing anxiety, and they're hindering you at all from engaging in your daily activities, these are some things to think about. Okay, so the first stage is a pre-contemplation stage. And some of you may know this. So the pre-contemplation stage, it's a stage where people do not intend to change or to take action. I'm sorry, people don't really intend to take the action in the foreseeable future, but people are often unaware that their behavior is problematic or produces negative consequences. People in this stage often underestimate the pros and cons of changing their behavior, and they place too much emphasis on the cons of changing behavior. So if you're like, well, yeah, I know I need to exercise, I want to do this, but I'm not too sure because I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do this. I feel okay and safe right here sitting in bed. That's the pre-contemplation stage. The contemplation stage says that people are intending to start their healthy behavior in the foreseeable future. So people recognize that, one, that their behavior may be problematic. Okay, I have too much anxiety going on. I'm not getting out of bed. This anxiety is causing me to put off my assignments until the very last minute. So they're recognizing that this behavior is problematic, and they're more thoughtful and practical consideration of the pros and cons. It's starting to take place for them to change their behavior. Okay, so now they're having equal emphasis on the pros and cons rather than just more emphasis on the cons, such as in the pre-contemplation stage. The next stage is the preparation stage. In this stage, people are ready to take action. They want the change. People start to take small steps towards the behavior change. Okay, I'm going to get off this couch. I'm going to push away from this table. I'm going to get out of my apartment. I'm going to get out of my house. I'm going to get out of bed. I need to do something different for my mental health. And I know that exercise is the key to making me feel better. That's the preparation stage. The action stage, which is the 4th stage, now people have recently changed their behavior. They defined what it is, and they intend to keep moving forward with that behavior change. So people may exhibit this by modifying their problem behavior or acquiring new healthy behaviors. So now I'm getting up, I'm starting to walk, I'm going outside, I'm doing what I need to do to make this exercise happen. And then the fifth stage is the maintenance stage. You've gotten through everything else, you're actually engaging in the exercise or in the behavior modification to where now you just want to maintain it. So the keys for all of this, number one, is to recognize and be mindful of your current thoughts, behaviors, and circumstances, okay? Don't minimize or dismiss them. Rather, feel and experience them. Take some time to understand what your thoughts are, what your behaviors are, and how they develop. And more importantly, how are they affecting or hindering your lifestyle, okay? Are you calling in sick to work? Are you lagging on your schoolwork? Are you eating or sleeping more or less? Are your relationships suffering? So you're basically taking note of all this stuff, a mental note, or if you want to write it down. How did I get to this point? What's going on with me? What's different? And then once you've taken the time to reflect on that, it's time to take action. Do something to pull yourself up and out, whether it's calling a friend or a family member, whether it's just taking a walk or a drive to the store. Make a decision to do something at that very moment, okay? And have you guys heard of the WRAP, the Wellness Recovery Action Plan? Okay, the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, it's, you can go online and check that out. Basically, it's a way to overcome certain addictions or certain fears, certain worries. And along the lines of that, what they suggest is that you write out your plan. You write out what you're feeling. So in this case, you want to write out what your triggers were. What got you into this sad state? What got you into this depressive state? What made you anxious? Write them out, list them, so you can actually see them on paper, okay? And then the thoughts and behaviors that you experience, write them out. Whatever's hindering you or stifling you from engaging in activities or your normal everyday life, write these things out. So basically you have a journal that you can refer to. And then you guys know, when you write stuff down, I don't know if a lot of you take notes in class, or, you know, I used to, because it helps me. When I take notes, I can go back and refer to them, and it does something. It just gets that lesson inside of me, okay? So take some time to write out what you used to enjoy. What is it that you do enjoy? Describe yourself when you are well, basically. What is it that you enjoy doing? So a lot of you, you're in the middle of your schoolwork now. There's some things in life that have to be put off for a little while, but don't ever forget what it is that you enjoyed doing. If it's going to the beach and riding your bike along the beach, or just hanging out at the beach, going to the mountains and mountain biking, or gaming, whatever it is that you enjoy, don't lose sight of that, okay? So list the reasons why you enjoy what you're doing or why you want to exercise. List short-term and long-term goals. List ways that keep you on track and will help you keep consistent with that. And then you translate all these into a daily plan. So what I teach my clients who are experiencing depression and anxiety that keeps them from engaging in their normal everyday life activities is to, well, number one, be mindful of it. Don't dismiss it. Don't dismiss it at all, because when you do that, you're suppressing all of those feelings that you have inside of you. And you know what? You and I one of my professors used to describe us as water balloons. When you hook yourself up to a water hose and you start filling up that water balloon, if you don't poke a little hole somewhere to let water out, you're going to explode. That little hole that you poke to let water out is what you need to do for yourself to be able to keep going, whether it's talking to somebody, getting stuff out, whether it's exercising. You have to have a way out so you don't explode, because a lot of us will hold stuff in and deny exactly what we're feeling, especially guys. Guys do it all the time. You know, I was raised in an environment where it's like, you know, if you fall down on your bike and you're a little boy, get up, you get popped in the back of the head, get on your bike and start riding your bike. Don't cry. But, you know, I have a little 5-year-old girl. If she falls on her bike, oh my gosh, I'm the first one there. I'm dusting her off. I'm holding her. Don't cry, baby, you know. So we treat girls differently than boys. We treat our little girls to express their feelings, but not boys. So we tend to hold that stuff in and not let it out. But we have to acknowledge, you know what, I'm sad, I'm anxious, something's going on here. Reflect it, be mindful of what you're feeling in your body, and then make a decision to do something different. Don't forget how you got to that point, but make that decision to do something different and move on and engage in some type of physical activity. Right? All right, let's get some questions.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Ruben. That was so informative. Yeah, please, questions, concerns, sharing, anybody.
I have a question that I guess we can start with. Ruben, do you notice with your clients, like if there's ever a thought process or some kind of event that happens to get someone from the pre-contemplation stage to that, what is it, preparatory phase?
The contemplation?
Yeah, to the next phase where you're starting to take small steps to improving your mental health.
Yes.
Is there some kind of marker or something that happens between those two stages?
There is. That's a great question, Alejandro. Great question. There is actually. The pre-contemplation stage, they're not yet recognizing that what's going on in their life is really affecting them in a negative way or affecting others. So when they go from that stage to the contemplation stage, where they're actually starting to understand that their behavior is becoming problematic, there's a huge shift, And a lot of my clients, they don't like the way that feels. So they get stuck in that stage, especially when their behavior is affecting someone else, like a partner, an intimate relationship partner, or even children. You know, when parents or a partner, when they start to understand that, man, my behavior is really affecting the person that I love, they get either more depressed or anxiety starts to set in, because they can't believe that they allowed their behavior to get to that point. So that is a very good question, because that's one of the hardest stages to go to the next one too. And my job as a therapist in that level is to get them to understand within themselves. I'm not going to point things out to them. So you guys keep in mind that a good therapist is never going to tell you what to do. They're going to help you develop those thought processes on your own. And the more you talk about it and the more they guide you to be able to verbalize those thought processes, the harder it is on the client, but the more eye-opening it really is. So yes, that's a very good question. Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
were doing that for me right now, Ruben. I was just going to say, like, just your presentation or, you know, all the talking points you had alone, I was like, wait, I think I might be doing something that might be bad. So that's literally already happening.
Yeah, I was just gonna like add on to that as well. Just personal experience for me is that with school, like we are constantly on and constantly stressed and anxious. And it's always like, oh, this is normal. Like, this is fine. We're college students. Like, you know, it's normal to be anxious. But then it started affecting my relationship. I was like, wait a minute, this probably isn't normal. So yeah, transitioning to that phase, there's always that like one trigger almost. But for college students, it's so hard because again, we're like stuck in this environment where, you know, everyone's grinding, everyone's on caffeine and everything like that. So you can't really notice you have an issue in the first place because it's so normalized within like our population.
Absolutely. That's a very good point, Dom. Very good point. You know, we do chalk a lot of things up in life to just being normal, you know, and the way we talk about them helps the way we internalize that also. That's why you know, when people say I have anxiety or I have depression, I like to give them the clinical definitions of anxiety and depression. when they understand that they don't meet the criteria for a clinical diagnosis, then now it becomes worry or sadness, not anxiety and depression. So when you tell yourself that you have anxiety or you have depression, there's something that's triggered within your psyche that now you've rose to the level of a clinical diagnosis rather than just being sad or being worried, you know. But I agree, grad school especially, it's like, you know, there was times where I could actually say I had anxiety in grad school, you know, so you can't dismiss that either, but you have to take the steps for yourself. You have to take your mental health days. You have to get away, you know, even if it's studying in a different environment. You know, I used to go up to the mountains, and right up here before you get to Big Bear, there was a turnout, and there was this a little like a picnic bench. Hardly anybody ever went there. I think I went there 20 times in one semester, and there was never anyone there. I'd pull off the side of the road on a really nice day, take my books, and just read and study. And just doing that outside of my home, oh my gosh, not only did I retain more, but I was much more at peace and calm within me, that I felt like, wow, I could do this for 2 years, you know? So yeah, that's good. Thank you.
That's a great point, Ruben. I expressed this to, you know, several people already. I think a big part for me is the fact that my home life and my work life are now in the same spot. And it's been really hard for me to transition to figure out a way to navigate that. So definitely, obviously, it's a little different nowadays, what with, you know, worries about COVID and things like that. But
Yes.
Now more than ever, like Ruben did, it's probably a good idea to get outside somewhere, you know, by yourself in a you know, a safer, socially distant place, and do your studying or do something that helps you feel better, and so that you can get through what you're stressed and worried about.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I have a quick question about like cultural differences and cultural things that happen, because I mean, you know, specifically, you know, what I've noticed specifically in like the Polynesian culture, also into like the Latino culture, is the fact that specifically for the differences of sex, right? So men are supposed to be strong and not supposed to be able to go ahead and show these type of emotions and ask for help. You know, these things are like these microaggressions that's ingrained into your culture that you develop, and not knowing the fact that you actually do these things that is toxic to yourself, you know. So can you kind of like highlight some things that they can possibly do for that?
Yes. That's a very good question, and thank you for that. You know, I battled that my entire life, you know, being Latino and growing up here on the west side of San Bernardino. And, you know, I had tattoos at a very young age. And yeah, I'm not your typical therapist, you know? Exactly. So there were these stereotypical things that were ingrained in me that I had to be. And then going to the military, you know, the military is better now than when I was in, but in the military, you weren't able to go to anybody and say, hey, you know what I just saw out there on the battlefield, I'm not handling that very well. You just suck it up and you go with it. So with cultural differences, Ian, what I found is, you know, if it's anything like my family, we can't go to other family members. There might be that one family member that will understand and kind of just have you know, an empathetic understanding with us, that we can explain what's going on. Maybe a good friend, a trusting friend. Typically, with Hispanics, Asians, Pacific Islanders, you know, family members will tell us, well, just get over it. You know, what are you doing? What are you thinking? You know, or don't say that to anybody else, because that we don't want our family to be shamed or anything like that. What happened with me and some of my other clients is it just got to a point where something was bothering us too much that we had to seek help. You know, I was at that point when I got out of the military, my anger was just through the roof. It was off the charts. You know, I had road rage. I had somebody would just look at me wrong. Yeah, I would always sit where, in a public place with my back to the wall where I can see the door. And there was a lot of things not only associated with my culture, but associated with PTSD that I was, later diagnosed with. But it's not until you can actually find someone that you trust, find someone that you can actually talk to. I didn't believe in therapy, Ian. I never believed in therapy. I grew up with, like, you don't take your family problems or any problems that you have to anybody on the outside. You keep that stuff within yourself, and you learn to deal with it. And it just got to a point where if I would have kept going the way I was, I would have had a lot of legal problems. My job with the post office was in jeopardy a couple of times. And I finally went to the VA hospital, and I went through 2 or 3 therapists because I'm thinking, okay, well, I can be picky at who I want here, And, the first person was a woman who was just out of school. I'm like, you're not going to understand what's going on with me, So and that was my own misfortunes, because I was unwilling to open up to anybody that was willing to help me out. So it wasn't until I was really able to open up and talk about my childhood experiences. There's times where I look back at my childhood experiences and I experienced probably more traumatic events growing up on the streets than I did in the military. So those were things that were deeply sacred to me that I had to feel comfortable opening up with somebody. So Ian, I would say find somebody that you feel comfortable with, somebody that can understand you, somebody that's not going to judge you. When I got into this line of work, I made a promise to myself that I'm not going to judge anybody because I've been judged and I know what it feels like. And I will never put that on anybody ever. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely, because I think it gets to the point where you're categorized in such a way, right? Like, so your perception of how others perceive you sees you in such a light that doesn't necessarily coexist with what you think mentally inside of you behind closed doors. So
Absolutely.
It gets to the point where you get to that level where you don't want to show that to people because you're afraid of the fact that they might get sad because of it, because how low it can be and how depressing and how hurtful it can be, and you don't want that for other people. And it gets to that point where, like, not asking for help turns into, like, the only thing that can make everything go away, and the only thing that can let you breathe just for 2 minutes, that's all you want is 2 minutes of breathing,
Mm-hmm.
is suicide. Because that's the only thing that can release everything, and you get to that point where you don't think about, who you're going to hurt and who you're going to miss. You just want to breathe for 2 minutes.
Yes, I completely understand with you, Ian. And like I said, I would strongly suggest that you find someone, I had a professor in grad school he wasn't in the military, but he had worked with a lot of veterans. And he's the one that actually convinced me to seek help at the VA. But I think he was the one that actually allowed me that 2 minutes of just breathing to get out what I needed to get out. And it was just that one professor that really opened the door for me to get into treatment and get some help. And it made a world of difference, and I didn't have to, pretend to be someone else in that room. Yeah.
That's powerful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I can totally relate to what Ian was just talking about, where, you have this in the back of your mind, something you feel great about yourself, you feel yourself growing, and you can't share it with your family and your friends. And this wave of guilt kind of comes over you, you don't want them to feel bad. I recently have been exploring that emotion myself. You explore it over the years, but now I feel like that's one of my biggest emotions, and it's a hard thing to do. And what I'm doing now is I'm just reminding myself that it's my life and I have to be the best of myself. And it's tough every day, but at the end of the day, I just, you know, if I'm proud of me, that's all that really matters. But I've also reached out to school counselors. Every school that I've gone to a few of them, and every school I've reached out to the counselors, and I find that that's quick help. So it's efficient while I'm in school. It's free, completely free. And I've never gotten that advice, but yeah, I totally relate with that. And it's a struggle. That one's tough.
Good. Thank you for that, Catherine. Yeah, that's a very good point. And the majority of schools, especially the ones that have a clinical program, usually they'll have a community clinic there on campus, or at least some trainees who may be still in school from a different school, and you know, they're all supervised by their professors. And I know we had a clinic at Cal State San Bernardino, and we would actually video record our sessions with, and not only did we see students, we saw people from the community also, but we would record our sessions, and then in our practicum, we would go over the tapes and review them, and we would get critiqued and a lot of different things. So it was well supervised. So it is good to reach out to someone there in your school. And you know, it's so important, everybody, that you develop some type of positive self-talk. You won't know how well that works until you actually begin to engage in it. You know, and it sounds corny just to think about it, you know, telling yourself, you know what, I am worthy of this. I am capable of going to school. I am worthy of having a relationship. You know, even though I have this anxiety, I still love and accept myself, you know. So all that positive self-talk really works wonders on your psyche. So your subconscious, when you hear your own voice like that, you're actually building up your self-esteem. So you can have others, you know, within your circle that help do that. But I mean, come on, nowadays it's really hard to get some type of validation unless it's from somebody that you really trust and admire, you know. So you have to do that yourself. So that is great, Catherine. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Catherine, because it's one of those things where you're developing techniques where, you know, if something negative happens, then you do something positive that kind of classically conditions you for that. And, you know, like certain techniques that was taught to me was just the fact that every time that I think about something that's very, very negative or very, very dark, you kind of squash that with two of the most amazing memories or two of the most amazing things that you can say about yourself, to be able to go ahead and release that. And sometimes the fact that you can talk to people about it without the feeling of judgment is great, because, you know, sometimes people just need to be heard without any advice. Does that make sense? Like, sometimes you just need someone there. You know, you don't need any advice. You already know what you're going through. You already know what you need to do, but it's that one person that just stays there in the room with you, even if it's just like, even if you're not talking at all, it's complete silence. And sometimes that is so powerful itself.
Yes, Ian, we call that therapeutic silence. Therapeutic silence. It's great, believe me, because you just causes both of you to really contemplate.
Yeah, it does wonders. Yeah.
Yes. Good. All right. Any other questions, anybody? Comments?
Yeah, I have a question for you from somebody who would like to remain anonymous, but they're wondering if due to COVID, if you have any advice that due to COVID, they had to move back home to a unsafe environment for their mental health and don't have the same access to resources that they used to. Do you have any advice for someone like that?
Yes, I do, actually. It depends on what level of isolation or quarantine that you're under, but there are several options. A lot of agencies right now are doing video therapies. There's a lot of agencies that work on sliding scales. I myself work with people who may not have the financial ability to pay someone either a copay or whatever. But there are some great apps also. I don't normally recommend apps unless you're following up with a therapist. So the Calm app, some of you might have seen that on some TV commercials. There's a lot of good apps that help with mindfulness exercises. So even on YouTube, there's some videos on mindfulness exercises. So, and basically they'll walk you through a short 2 or 3 or maybe even a 5-minute session of calmness. And it's guided meditation, actually, what it is. So they'll walk you through just imagining your breathing. You're taking note of your breathing, the air going in through your nose, out through your mouth. You imagine yourself, you feel your body sitting in your chair, your bottom, your arms if they're on the armchair, your feet on the ground. They'll walk you through this. And the more you practice these things, the more they become second nature. It's almost like, I don't know, some of you may know what homeostasis is. It's a baseline of what your body, how it's regulated and how your body operates. So everybody has a homeostasis level of what your body operates at. Heart rate, respirations, everything. When you practice these mindfulness exercises, your homeostasis comes back down to that level or even lowers. So you're doing something where it's now psychosomatic. What you're thinking is now actually affecting your body functions. So there's great tools on the web for all of this. I do suggest that you talk to a mental health professional, at least run it by someone, what you're doing and how to do it, because they can become ineffective. And I don't think any of them are harmful, but they can become ineffective if you don't use them right, or at the same time, talk with someone about what you're experiencing at home. What is so unhealthy about being at home? So, yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask any questions now.
Therapeutic silence.
I had a question. So I have bouts of, I'm not going to call it anxiety, but I would say of acute stress.
Okay.
And I don't know how to best handle in those situations because I just want to get back to the task and I just want to get things done. And it's a little debilitating in the moment.
Okay.
What do you recommend getting out of that acute bout?
Okay, if it doesn't last for that long, or it's, well, the quickest way is filling your system with oxygenated blood. And there's a thing called diaphragmatic breathing. So to get a visual on it, you put one hand on your chest, you put one hand on your stomach, you sit straight in your chair with your feet on the floor. And what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in through your nose as deep as you can. And as you do that, the only part of your frontal area that is going to move is your abdomen. Your chest is going to stay stationary. So as you're filling your lungs, your diaphragm is a little bit lower than what your chest cavity is in. So your abdomen is going to extend as you're breathing in through your nose, and then your abdomen is going to go back in as you're blowing out through your mouth. And as you blow out, you're going to imagine as though you have tape on your mouth. So you're going to force that breath out very slowly. So if you do that about 3 to 4 times, and slowly, because if you do it too fast, it's going to mimic a panic attack where you feel dizzy and you want to pass out. That could be worse. But if you do that about 3 or 4 times, and if you practice that throughout the day, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, it's going to, when I was talking about that homeostasis level, it helps with your overall anxiety level, because now you're filling your system with that oxygenated blood. So that's the quickest way. The other way is something that takes a little bit more time, and it's called cognitive restructuring. So it's where we teach clients to restructure their thoughts, to not catastrophize so much, because anxiety is something for the future. Depression is usually comes on from something from the past. We get sad about something from the past. So if you change your thoughts, your thought processes about the future, about what's going to happen. Let's say this exam's coming up and it's a big exam. Change your thoughts about it. You know what? I've studied a lot. I have a great knowledge about it. I listened in class. I took notes on all the lectures. So now you're changing your negative thought processes into something positive, which actually lowers your anxiety also. So those two things are the quickest ways to be able to reduce your anxiety.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Very helpful.
Anything else, anyone?
Yeah, actually, if it's okay, I just wanted to talk to the person who's like really struggling at home. Before I got into Cal State Long Beach, I was living with my family in an incredibly toxic environment, and I struggled incredibly badly. And one thing though that did help was, the mindfulness that Ruben was talking about, and just like kind of like self-exploration, like figuring out like the best ways for me. That really helped calm me down and getting to know myself the best. So that way I was able to pick up on my triggers a little bit before they triggered me, if that makes any sense. And it's not easy work. It's hard kind of exploring yourself while you're in such a toxic environment. But, if you really need to find a way to cope, I highly recommend it. And, another thing, I'm a sports psych student and talking about psychology and everything, we talk a lot about mindfulness. And I think the most important aspect is the no judgment part of mindfulness. When, you're trying to become self-aware and you're trying to, just take in, sorry, I don't know what they're doing. They're just you're trying to figure out like what's going on and just, be mindful of everything, what you're doing. Like I hear a lot of people talking about guilt right now. And it's like, you already have enough people giving you enough crap as it is. Like, just when you're trying to be mindful, do not just do it without judgment. That's supposed to be like the whole thing about mindfulness. It's just taking each moment as it goes, recognizing it, feeling it, not necessarily understanding it, but like just recognizing it as a moment and letting it pass. No feelings necessarily attached to it or anything like that, and just let it go. And again, easier said than done. A lot of these things are, but the more you kind of work at it, the more natural it becomes. And, unfortunately, I'm still kind of living in a situation that I'm not too thrilled with. But, when I start feeling like really angry or really tense, it's gotten to the point where it's second nature and it does really help. So I just wanted to say that for that person from personal experience.
Anyone else? Thank you, Courtney. That was really good.
I have a quick question for you, Ruben.
Yes.
I know that there's this like communication style or tool that certain practitioners use called like motivational interviewing, and it kind of like addresses people's ambivalence to kind of like taking those first steps to changing something in their life that they're thinking of doing, kind of like what you were talking about before about the stages of change. And I was wondering if there's anything that you can do alone, because I know that's mainly used with a therapist. Is there any tools that you can do alone to kind of like motivate yourself to make those changes?
Absolutely, Val. And it kind of goes along the lines with what Courtney was just talking about. It's basically taking, it's self-reflecting. You you have to really take note of yourself. Self-reflect on the things that you like about yourself, the things that you don't like about yourself, the things that you want to improve on, the things that you want to do away with or, get better at. So it does take a little longer to do, but when you're honest with yourself, it's like what I tell my clients. The harder you work, the quicker you're going to be able to get well. So the more that you're able to be real with yourself and look at the things that you want to change, and you establish a plan on how you're going to change those things. So for instance, if let's say that you have some troubles with friends, I don't know, maybe just with relationships in general. If you can sit down and really look at your part of the relationship, what you bring to the relationship, whether it's family, friends, an intimate relationship, how do people perceive you? I read a book one time, and some of you may have read it or heard about it. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, Dr. Stephen Covey. Very famous book. Those 7 habits, he talks about the first habit is to begin with the end in mind. And basically what you're doing is you're picturing yourself in your coffin at your funeral, and people are getting up to eulogize you. They're talking about no holds barred how you are, how this person was when they were alive. So that's pretty much what you have to do in self-reflection. How do people see you? How do people perceive you? What have you been told by people? And it's hard to do, but when you take that inventory and you make a plan on how you're going to address each one and get to the goal that you want, and then set realistic goals for yourself. That is how you begin that positive change that you can do on your own. When you start to minimize or dismiss certain things about yourself, that's where a therapist would actually step in and pull that out of you because some people don't like to go to that part, especially people that have had traumatic pasts, because we don't want to relive those traumas, or any type of trauma. But if you can be open and honest with yourself and really take inventory about what it is that you need to change, then you can develop an action plan to get to where you need to be. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. Anyone else? Questions, concerns, comments?
That's my line. I'm just kidding.
All right, Noah, let's hear it.
Oh no, I mean, I can. Oh, believe me, I can go to a place where I talk about everything that I don't like. But no, I was just gonna let everybody know. You don't feel like you have to share if you guys are good. Again, you are obviously free to go. Thank you so much for coming. For those of you who have attended our nutrition colloquium and this one, you have been taking attendance, and you are still have the chance to be entered into the raffle as long as you make that 3rd colloquium next month. Thank you all for coming, and thank you those for sharing, and all those for chatting as well. If you would like to stay and continue some of this, please do. If you are a little busy and need to go, totally fine as well. You're not going to miss a thing. This is recorded, so if we get a significant amount of people wanting us to put this on our beach sync, we will. But again, thank you so much for everybody who's coming, and again, anybody who wants to share, please do so.
Yeah, and is it okay, Noah, if I go ahead and put my email or my phone number down in the message link for people to call or text me or email me with any questions or concerns they may have?
Yes, please
Okay.
do so. Absolutely. So while he does that, again, anybody, please feel free to share, even just to comment, anything like that. I don't know who else noticed, but Queen Esme over here getting served dinner during our, you know what I'm saying? I just see people walking out of the walls behind her and I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? All right, sorry.
Sorry, I haven't eaten for a while, so my mom felt bad. She's just being a mom, you know, doing her thing.
Hey, Ruben, can I ask you something about school?
Absolutely.
So, taking a break and everything, like you said, you had graduated from Bible college and stuff like that, and you had a little bit of time before you went to undergrad and everything. How difficult was it for you to get back into it, and how did you deal with the transition?
It was difficult because I was back in the workforce. I was with the Postal Service, and the post office was just crazy in itself. And I was, always getting or wanting to get promoted. So I was actually getting promoted a lot. So the more I did, the more likely I was to be able to get promoted. So I spent a lot of time at work. I was there doing things learning finances, postal finances after my 8-hour or 10-hour shift ended. So when I went back to school, I had to relearn my study habits. In the post office, you're just kind of used to taking orders or implementing strategies that you were given by by a higher up versus actually sitting down and taking things in. So, my first year was really tough. I had to get tutors, and I had to, record classes so I could go back and listen to them over and over again. After that, I had developed my study habits, and it became a little bit easier. And then that was my undergrad. Grad school was a lot easier for me than what I had expected, in that now you're getting into, and many of you know this, you're getting into more of your thought processes surrounding certain topics. Yeah, we had classes where, lectures where we had to sit and learn, but, the majority of our classes were just discussion. And then in my grad class, there was 12 of us in my cohort that went through the whole 2 years together. So there wasn't anybody else from the outside. It was just us 12 for the whole 2 years. So it was a really intimate setting, and everybody was just free to be able to speak whatever they wanted to. So it was a lot easier in the sense where the learning environment wasn't as strict and as structured, although you actually take in more that way than just regurgitating something that you read from a book or listened to from a lecture. But it was difficult, Court. It was difficult, but I got through it. I did engage. I took advantage of a lot of study groups. People would say, "Hey, I'm going to start a study group," and I'd be the first one there. So, but yeah, thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely the social creature. I need people and study groups and things, and that's part of the other thing that's like I've been struggling with in this whole like lockdown thing, is that like the isolation part is probably the worst part, just because I need people, all kinds of relationships and things to help me stay energized. So the study groups, I'm definitely the one that's like trying to organize them and first one showing up and trying to teach everybody, because that's what helps me learn and connect the most.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, coming out of the military too, I mean, I had some time in between the time I got out to the time I went back to school, but there's still that part of you that I don't want to say it's stereotypical. Not all people that get out of the military tend to just kind of be loners or isolate themselves, but I did kind of fall into that category, so, going back to school for me was more than just a learning environment. It was more relearning the social aspect of who I really was, you know. So yeah, I had an amazing experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
How are we feeling, everybody? We got anything else? Any other questions we want answered or addressed? Any concerns? Any other sharing that we want to do? How we feel?
I wish someone would bring me food.
Bro, I'm sitting in my car eating dinner just so I have some privacy to listen to this. I feel that.
Yeah, I've got this right here because my 5-year-old daughter said, "Daddy, I want you to buy this." So I've got so yeah, I can't work under such conditions.
Is she going trick-or-treating?
You know, I don't know. I live in a condo complex, and everybody here is really